The morning sun barely crested the horizon when Maya Rodriguez arrived at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility in Coronado, California. The salty Pacific breeze whipped through her tied-back hair as she stepped out of her truck, clutching her duffel bag with white-knuckled determination. At 24 years old, she stood 5 feet 6 inches tall, lean and muscular from years of competitive swimming and military preparation. Her brown eyes scanned the compound with a mixture of anticipation and steel resolve. This was it, the moment she had been working toward for the past 3 years. She had known this day would come with challenges that extended far beyond physical endurance. Being one of only 3 women in a class of 48 candidates made her a visible target, a fact she had accepted long before submitting her application. But Maya had not come this far to back down. She had graduated top of her class at the Naval Academy, excelled in underwater demolition training, and pushed her body to limits most people could not imagine. Her father, a retired Marine, had taught her early that respect was earned through action, not given through sympathy. The other candidates were already gathering near the obstacle course when Maya approached. She could feel their eyes on her, some curious, others openly skeptical. A few offered polite nods, but most turned back to their conversations, dismissing her presence as quickly as they had noticed it. She was used to this. In every training environment she had entered since joining the Navy, she had faced the same reception. The question that hung in the air, unspoken but palpable, was always the same. Did she really belong here? Chief Petty Officer Marcus Holloway stood near the starting line of the obstacle course, his massive arms crossed over his chest. At 42, he was a legend in the SEAL community, having completed 7 deployments and earned a chest full of commendations. His weathered face bore the scars of combat, and his gray eyes missed nothing. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority that came from decades of leading men in the most dangerous situations imaginable. "Listen up," Holloway barked, his voice cutting through the morning chatter. "You are here because you think you have what it takes to become Navy SEALs. I am here to tell you that most of you do not. This training will break you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Only those with true warrior spirit will make it through. There are no participation trophies here. There are no special accommodations. You either meet the standard or you go home." Maya felt the weight of those words, but she did not flinch. She had heard variations of this speech before. What she did notice was the way Holloway's eyes lingered on her for just a fraction of a second longer than the others. It was not hostile, but it was assessing, calculating whether she would become a liability to the team. The first drill began within minutes. A 5-mile beach run in boots and fatigues, followed by 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 pull-ups. Maya kept pace with the middle of the pack during the run, her breathing controlled and steady. She had learned not to push too hard too early, conserving energy for the sustained effort that these training sessions demanded. When they reached the pull-up bars, she knocked out her repetitions with clean form, her muscles burning but holding strong. It was during the hand-to-hand combat drills that the real trouble began. The candidates were paired off randomly for grappling exercises, techniques designed to simulate close-quarters combat situations. Maya found herself matched against a man named Derek Thompson, a 6'2" former college wrestler with arms like tree trunks. He outweighed her by at least 70 pounds. "You sure about this?" Derek asked, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. There was no malice in his voice, but there was clear condescension. He was already treating this as a foregone conclusion. "Let's find out," Maya replied evenly, dropping into her fighting stance. The instructor blew the whistle, and Derek came at her with confidence bordering on arrogance. He tried to close the distance quickly, using his size advantage to overwhelm her. But Maya had anticipated this. She had spent countless hours studying leverage and technique precisely because she knew she would always be at a size disadvantage. As Derek reached for her, she pivoted, using his momentum against him, and attempted a hip throw. It almost worked. For a split second, Derek was off balance. But his sheer mass and strength allowed him to recover, and he countered by wrapping his arms around her torso and driving her to the mat with bone-jarring force. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs, and before she could recover, he had secured a dominant position, his weight pinning her down. "Tap out," he said, not unkindly. No shame in it. Maya's jaw clenched. She bucked and twisted, trying to create space, but Derek's grappling experience showed. He transitioned smoothly to a submission hold, applying just enough pressure to make his point without causing injury. After several more seconds of futile struggle, Maya tapped the mat twice, signaling her submission. Derek released her immediately and offered a hand to help her up. Maya took it, her face flushed with frustration more than exertion. Around them, she could see other candidates watching, some with sympathy, others with the knowing look of people whose suspicions had been confirmed. Over the next week, the pattern repeated itself. During every grappling drill, every close-quarters combat scenario, Maya found herself consistently overpowered. She was not unskilled. Her technique was often praised by the instructors. But in the brutal mathematics of physical confrontation, mass and strength won more often than not. Her opponents were not trying to humiliate her. Most of them were professional and respectful. But the results spoke for themselves. By the end of the second week, the whispers had started. Maya heard fragments of conversations that died when she approached. She saw the looks exchanged between candidates, the subtle shake of heads, the unspoken consensus forming. Some of it was genuine concern about whether she could hold her own in a real combat situation. Some of it was less noble, the age-old resentment of someone perceived as not earning their place, of standards being lowered or bent. The worst part was not the physical defeats. Maya could accept losing in a fair fight against a bigger, stronger opponent. What ate at her was the growing sense that every loss reinforced a narrative she was desperate to overcome. She was not just losing for herself. She was losing for every woman who would come after her, every person who had ever been told they were not good enough because of their gender. One evening after training, Maya sat alone in the chow hall, picking at her food without appetite. Her body ached from the day's drills, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the mental and emotional toll. She replayed each combat scenario in her mind, analyzing what she could have done differently, searching for the solution that would level the playing field. "You mind if I sit?" The voice belonged to another candidate named James Park, a soft-spoken former Army Ranger who had transferred to the Navy specifically for SEAL training. He was one of the few people who had consistently treated Maya as just another candidate, neither patronizing nor hostile. "Free country," Maya said, gesturing to the empty seat across from her. James sat down with his tray and ate in silence for a moment before speaking. "For what it is worth, your technique is solid. I have seen guys with worse fundamentals make it through." "Technique does not mean much when you are pinned to the mat," Maya said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "True," James acknowledged. "But this training is not just about winning every fight. It is about proving you can function under stress, adapt to challenges, and support your team. You have been doing that." Maya appreciated the sentiment, but she knew the reality was more complicated. "The instructors are watching me differently," she said. "I can feel it. Every time I lose, they are tallying it up, wondering if I am a weak link." James did not deny it because they both knew it was true. "Then, you find a way to change the narrative," he said simply. "You have come too far to let this break you." After James left, Maya sat alone with her thoughts. She knew he was right. Quitting was not an option, and wallowing in self-pity would not change anything. She needed a new strategy, a way to demonstrate value beyond pure physical dominance. But in a training program designed to identify the toughest warriors, where every evaluation came down to performance under pressure, what could she do differently? The answer came during a navigation exercise 3 days later. The candidates were split into teams and sent into the mountains with only a map and compass, tasked with reaching a series of checkpoints over rough terrain. Maya's team consisted of 5 people, including Derek Thompson and a candidate named Connor Mills, a former competitive powerlifter who had been vocal about his skepticism regarding women in combat roles. The terrain was brutal, steep inclines covered in loose rocks and dense brush. After 4 hours of hiking, the team reached a ravine that their map indicated they needed to cross. The designated crossing point was a fallen log spanning the gap, about 20 feet above a rocky streambed. "This is going to be sketchy," Derek said, eyeing the log dubiously. It was wet from recent rain and slick with moss. Connor stepped forward confidently. "I will go first," test if it holds. He made it about halfway across before the log shifted suddenly beneath his weight. Connor froze, his arms windmilling as he fought for balance. For a terrifying moment, it looked like he might fall, but he managed to drop to his knees, straddling the log and gripping it with both hands. "It is not stable," he called back, his voice strained. "This thing could roll any second." The team exchanged worried glances. Going back would add hours to their route, potentially causing them to miss their time window. But attempting the crossing with an unstable log was dangerous. Maya studied the ravine, her mind working through the problem. "There," she said, pointing to a cluster of smaller trees on their side of the gap. "If we tie off a safety line to those trees and run it across to that boulder on the other side, we can create a handline. Anyone crossing will have something to hold on to if the log shifts." "We do not have enough rope to span that distance," Derek pointed out. "We do if we use our equipment straps and belts," Maya said. She was already unclipping her belt, working quickly to demonstrate how they could link multiple pieces together. "It will not be perfect, but it will give us a backup." The team looked at each other, then at Maya with new consideration. Derek nodded. "Let's do it." They worked together to construct the improvised safety line, with Maya directing the effort and making adjustments to ensure maximum tension and stability. Once it was secure, Connor was able to complete his crossing, and the rest of the team followed successfully. They made it to their checkpoint with 15 minutes to spare. That evening, during the debrief, the instructors specifically mentioned the ravine crossing, highlighting it as an example of effective problem-solving under pressure. Maya felt a small surge of validation, though she knew one success did not erase the previous setbacks. But something had shifted, however, slightly. In the barracks that night, a few more candidates nodded to her in acknowledgement. James gave her a knowing smile. Even Connor, who had been among the most skeptical, offered a grudging good thinking today as he passed her. Maya knew this was not the end of her struggles. Tomorrow would bring new combat drills, new opportunities to be overpowered by bigger, stronger opponents. The whispers and doubts would not disappear overnight. But, for the first time since training began, she felt a glimmer of hope that there might be a path forward, a way to prove her worth that did not require her to win every physical confrontation. What she did not know was that her performance was being watched by someone beyond the immediate training cadre, someone whose opinion could change everything. And, in 3 days, that person would step onto the training ground and force everyone, instructors and candidates alike, to reconsider their assumptions about what made a warrior. The next morning brought a new set of challenges. The candidates were roused before dawn for a surprise drill that the instructors called Hell in a Cell. It was a scenario-based exercise conducted in a mock urban combat environment, a maze of plywood structures and shipping containers designed to simulate the tight, confusing spaces of actual combat zones. Teams of 4 were sent in with paintball markers, tasked with clearing rooms while opposing teams defended. Maya found herself teamed with Maya dropped to a crouch behind a barricade, her training taking over. Lisa moved to the opposite side of the room, providing covering fire. The 2 women worked in synchronized silence, communicating with hand signals they had drilled countless times. Maya spotted movement in the far corner, a defender trying to reposition. She fired 3 quick shots, catching him in the shoulder. 1 down. The remaining defender was well positioned behind a reinforced barrier, making a frontal assault nearly suicidal. Maya scanned the room, her mind racing through tactical options. Above them, she noticed a narrow catwalk that ran along the ceiling, part of the structure's framework. It would be exposed for several seconds, but it offered an angle on the defender's position that he could not cover while maintaining his current line of fire. Without waiting for approval, Maya slung her marker across her back and grabbed the support beam, pulling herself up. Her arms burned with the effort, but years of rock climbing and upper body conditioning paid off. She moved quickly along the catwalk, her feet light on the metal grating. Below, Lisa kept up suppressing fire, keeping the defender pinned. From her elevated position, Maya had a clear shot. She unslung her marker and fired. The paintball caught the defender's center mass. The whistle blew, signaling the end of the engagement. Maya's team had successfully cleared the room, despite losing half their force in the initial contact. The instructors gathered the teams for an immediate after-action review, a standard practice that forced candidates to analyze their performance while the adrenaline was still fresh. Chief Holloway stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable as always. "Thompson, you rushed your entry," Holloway said bluntly. "You made yourself a target because you were thinking about your individual action instead of team coordination. What happens when the biggest guy on your team goes down first?" Connor's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Noted, Chief." Holloway turned to Maya. "Rodriguez, that was reckless. Climbing up there exposed you completely. If that defender had seen you 3 seconds earlier, you would have been out, and your team would have been down to 1. Maya kept her expression neutral. "Yes, Chief. But the defender was focused on the ground-level threat. I assessed that the risk was acceptable given our tactical position." "You assessed," Holloway repeated, his tone skeptical. "In combat, your assessment gets people killed if you are wrong. You got lucky this time." The critique stung, but Maya understood the lesson. Calculated risk was part of warfare, but the line between calculated and reckless could be paper-thin. Still, she had completed the mission successfully, and that had to count for something. Over the next few days, the training intensified. The physical demands increased, pushing every candidate to their limits. 20-mile runs with weighted packs, ocean swims in frigid water, endless circuits of calisthenics that left muscles quivering and minds foggy with exhaustion. Maya kept pace, her conditioning and mental toughness seeing her through. But the combat drills remained her greatest challenge. During a grappling session at the end of the week, she found herself paired against Derek again. This time, she tried a different approach, focusing on defense and survival rather than trying to match his strength. She used her flexibility to create difficult angles, making it harder for him to secure dominant positions. When he did pin her, she worked on extending the engagement, making him work for every inch of control. It was not a victory, but it was progress. Derek was breathing harder when the round ended, and Maya had lasted significantly longer than in their previous matchups. Small improvements, but she was learning to fight her own fight rather than trying to match strategies designed for larger opponents. But progress was not enough for everyone. That evening, as Maya walked back to the barracks, she heard raised voices from around the corner of a building. She recognized one voice as belonging to Connor. "I am just saying what everyone is thinking," Connor was saying. "This is not about her as a person. It is about maintaining standards. Every time she gets pinned in 30 seconds, it shows that the physical requirements are not the same. She is meeting the same standards as everyone else," another voice argued back. Maya recognized it as James. "She passed every qualification test we did. She has the same scores we do." "Paper standards," Connor retorted. "But in real combat, paper does not mean anything. Strength matters. Size matters. And, like it or not, women do not have the same physical capacity as men. That is just biology." "So what are you saying?" James challenged. "That she should not be here? That no woman should. I am saying that lowering standards to include people who cannot perform in combat gets soldiers killed. If we are in a firefight and I go down, can she drag my 200-pound body to safety? Can she carry a wounded teammate across a battlefield?" These are legitimate questions. Maya felt her face flush hot. Part of her wanted to walk away, to not hear anymore. But another part needed to know how deep this sentiment ran. "You do not know what she can or cannot do," James said. "And neither do I. But she has earned the right to prove herself, same as any of us. If she cannot hack it, she will wash out. But making that judgment before she even has a chance is bullshit." "I hope you are right," Connor said, his tone softening slightly. "For everyone's sake. But hope does not win wars." Maya turned and walked back the way she had come, her stomach churning. Connor was not wrong about the physical realities. She was under no illusion that she could match the raw strength of the men in her class. But was that really what mattered most? Were strength and size the only measures of a warrior's worth? She thought about the ravine crossing, about the urban combat drill, about the countless situations in her life where intelligence and creativity had overcome physical limitations. But she also knew that Connor's concerns were not entirely baseless. In the chaos of combat, there would be moments when brute strength was the only thing that mattered. What happened then? Sleep came slowly that night. Maya lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with doubts that she had been suppressing for weeks. Was she being stubborn? Was she risking not just her own safety but that of future teammates by insisting she belonged in a role where her physical limitations could become a liability? No, she had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let doubt win now. There were women serving in combat roles around the world, proving every day that gender was not a disqualifier for bravery or effectiveness. She just needed to find her way, to demonstrate her value in a way that transcended simple measurements of strength. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. 3 days later, the candidates were awakened at 0300 hours by the wail of sirens. Instructors burst into the barracks, shouting orders for immediate muster in full gear. This was it, the beginning of Hell Week, the notorious crucible that would separate those with warrior spirit from those without. For the next 5 days, the candidates would be pushed beyond the limits of human endurance. They would sleep less than 4 hours total, run over 200 miles, perform continuous physical training in cold water and mud, and complete countless evolutions designed to break their will. Statistics showed that roughly 75% of candidates would ring the bell, voluntarily withdrawing from training. Maya was determined not to be one of them. As the instructors drove them into the frigid Pacific Ocean for the first of many surf tortures, she focused on her breathing, on staying in the moment, on not thinking about how many more hours of this lay ahead. The cold was shocking, stealing the breath from her lungs. But she had trained in cold water specifically for this. She knew her body would adapt, that the initial shock would give way to a bearable numbness if she could just endure the first few minutes. Around her, candidates were already struggling. One man was hyperventilating, his eyes wide with panic. An instructor pulled him out before he could hurt himself. Another candidate, a former college football player who had seemed indestructible during training, was shaking so violently his teeth chattered audibly. He would ring out before noon. Maya locked her jaw and endured. The hours blurred together. Ocean swims transitioned to log PT, where teams of 6 carried massive logs through obstacle courses and surf zones. Then came runs on the beach, boats on heads, more time in the water. The physical demands were brutal, but they were expected. What really broke people was the mental game. The knowledge that this would not end, that there was no relief coming, that every evolution completed would just lead to another, and another, and another. By the second day, 15 candidates had wrung out. By the third day, that number had climbed to 22. Maya was still there, her body running on autopilot, her mind retreating to a quiet place where the pain and exhaustion existed but could not touch her core will. She had discovered this place during her hardest swim competitions, when her body screamed to stop, but victory demanded one more lap. She lived there now, in that space beyond thought, beyond feeling, pure determination made flesh. It was during a boat race on the 4th day that things went sideways. The teams were paddling their inflatable boats through rough surf, racing to a buoy marker and back. Maya's team was in second place, everyone paddling in synchronized rhythm, when a rogue wave caught them broadside. The boat flipped, dumping all 6 candidates into the churning water. Maya surfaced quickly, training taking over. She grabbed the nearest piece of the overturned boat and looked around for her teammates. 5 heads were visible, all struggling but accounted for. Wait, 6 people on the boat. Where was the 6th? Head count, she shouted over the roar of the surf. The others called out, confirming 5 present. Connor was missing. Without thinking, Maya dove under the overturned boat. The water was murky with churned sand, visibility almost zero. She felt along the gunnel, searching for any sign of Connor. Her lungs were beginning to burn when her hand touched fabric. She grabbed and pulled, feeling resistance. Connor was caught on something, tangled in one of the boat's securing lines. Maya's mind raced. She needed air, and so did Connor. But if she surfaced without him, he could drown. She pulled at the line, trying to free it, her oxygen-deprived brain beginning to scream for breath. The line was wrapped around Connor's weight vest, and, in his exhausted, disoriented state, he had not been able to work it free. Maya's fingers found the quick-release clip on Connor's vest. She squeezed it, feeling the vest loosen. At the same moment, a hand grabbed her shoulder. An instructor had dived under to assist. Together, they freed Connor and pulled him to the surface. Connor emerged coughing and gasping, but alive. The instructor steadied him while another safety boat pulled alongside. Maya treaded water, her own chest heaving as she sucked in desperate breaths of air. Everyone accounted for. The lead instructor shouted from the safety boat. "All 6 here," Maya called back, her voice raw. "Get your boat flipped and back in the race. Move." The team worked together to right their boat and climb back in. They had fallen far behind in the race, but nobody cared. Connor looked at Maya, water streaming down his face, his eyes showing something she had not seen before: respect. "You saved my life," he said simply. "We are a team," Maya replied. "That is what teams do." They finished the race in last place, but when they reached shore, Chief Holloway was waiting. His expression was still stern, but there was something different in his eyes as he looked at Maya. "I owe you an apology," Connor said, sitting down heavily beside her. His face was haggard, eyes sunken with exhaustion. "I said some things, made some judgments. I was wrong." Maya turned to look at him, too tired for anger. "You said what you believed." "Yeah, but belief without evidence is just prejudice," Connor said. "I talked about standards and capability, but what I really had was assumptions. You proved those wrong today." "One moment does not prove anything," Maya said. "Tomorrow I will probably get pinned in 15 seconds in a grappling match." "Maybe," Connor acknowledged. "But being a SEAL is not just about winning fistfights. It is about having the courage to act when action is needed. It is about putting the mission and your teammates before yourself. You have that." "I see it now." Maya nodded, accepting the apology. She was too exhausted to say much more, and honestly, actions mattered more than words at this point. But something had shifted, not just with Connor but with the whole class. The candidates who had been skeptical were looking at her differently now. The whispers had not stopped entirely, but they had changed in tone. Hell Week continued its relentless assault. The 5th day was the hardest, when exhaustion had accumulated to levels that made simple tasks feel impossible. Maya found herself hallucinating during a beach run, seeing her father standing on the dunes, his Marine Corps dress uniform crisp and proud. He gave her a sharp salute before vanishing. She shook her head, trying to clear the vision, and kept running. More candidates rang out. By the end of Hell Week, only 19 of the original 48 remained. Maya was one of them, one of only 2 women who had made it through. Lisa Chun had also survived, and the 2 of them shared a moment of quiet triumph when the instructors finally called an end to the ordeal. "We did it," Lisa whispered, her voice cracking with emotion and exhaustion. "First step," Maya replied. "Long way to go still." But Hell Week was the major psychological barrier, the proving ground that separated those with true warrior spirit from those without. Having survived it, Maya felt a new confidence. Not arrogance. She was still acutely aware of her limitations, but a deep-seated knowledge that she could endure, that she could push through barriers that most people would consider impossible. The training that followed Hell Week was more technical and specialized. Weapons qualifications, demolitions training, dive operations, land warfare tactics. Maya excelled in many areas, her intelligence and attention to detail serving her well. She became known for her marksmanship, consistently scoring in the top tier of the class. Her underwater navigation was flawless. Her ability to remain calm in confined spaces under stress an asset in close-quarters training. But the combat drills remained a challenge. Even with improved technique and strategy, she still lost more often than she won in pure grappling confrontations. The difference now was that her teammates understood this did not make her a liability. They had seen her perform under pressure in real scenarios, and they knew she brought other strengths to the table. It was during the 8th week of training that everything changed. The class was in the middle of a tactical movement drill, practicing small unit tactics in the compound's mock village, when word came down that a visitor was arriving. Training was suspended immediately, candidates ordered to assemble in formation. Chief Holloway addressed them, his usual gruff demeanor tempered with something that might have been nervousness. "Commander Blackwood will be observing training today. You will conduct yourselves with the professionalism expected of SEAL candidates." Dismissed. The name sent a ripple through the formation. Commander Ethan Blackwood was a legend in the special operations community, a SEAL who had risen through the ranks based on pure merit and battlefield excellence. He had led some of the most dangerous missions in recent military history, earning a Silver Star and 2 Bronze Stars with valor. More importantly, he was known as a straight shooter who did not tolerate incompetence, but respected those who earned it. Maya had read about Blackwood during her research into SEAL culture. He was 45 years old, had spent 24 years in the Navy, and was considered by many to be one of the finest tactical minds in special operations. He was also known for his controversial opinions about the future of warfare, arguing that adaptability and intelligence would become more important than traditional measures of warrior capability as technology and tactics evolved. The candidates returned to their training, but everyone was hyper-aware of Blackwood's presence. He stood on an observation platform overlooking the training area, his tall frame unmistakable even at a distance. He wore standard fatigues with no indication of his rank except the insignia on his collar. His face was weathered and hard, with sharp features and penetrating blue eyes that seemed to catalog every detail below. The training schedule called for combat drills that afternoon, which meant Maya would once again be facing off against larger, stronger opponents. She tried not to think about the fact that her performance would be evaluated by one of the most respected SEALs in the Navy. Her first match was against James, which was fortunate. They had trained together enough that James understood her style and would not simply try to overpower her. The match was close, both of them working hard for every position, but James eventually secured a submission. Maya tapped out, frustrated but not humiliated. Her second match was against a candidate named Marcus Wright, a former Marine who stood 6 feet 4 inches and weighed 230 pounds of solid muscle. There was no finesse in Marcus's approach. He came at Maya like a freight train, using his superior reach and mass to immediately establish control. Within 45 seconds, Maya was pinned, unable to create any space or execute any of her techniques. She tapped out, her face burning with frustration. As she stood up, she caught sight of Commander Blackwood watching intently from his observation post. His expression was unreadable, but she imagined she could guess what he was thinking. Another woman who cannot hack it in real combat. The rest of the afternoon followed a similar pattern. Maya won against one of the smaller candidates, fought to a draw with another, and lost to 3 more of the larger men. By the time the session ended, she felt defeated in a way that Hell Week had never made her feel. At least during Hell Week, everyone was suffering equally. Here, her limitations were on full display. That evening, Chief Holloway called Maya to the instructor's office. Her stomach dropped. This was it. They were going to tell her that despite making it through Hell Week, despite her other strengths, the combat performance was not sufficient. She was going to be dropped from the program. She knocked on the door frame and entered when Holloway waved her in. To her surprise, Commander Blackwood was sitting in one of the chairs, his long legs stretched out in front of him. He gestured to another chair. "Sit, Rodriguez," he said. His voice was deep and calm, carrying authority without aggression. Maya sat, keeping her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Whatever was coming, she would face it with dignity. Blackwood studied her for a long moment before speaking. "I have been watching your performance. Reviewed your file, talked to your instructors, observed your training today. Want to know what I think?" "Yes, sir," Maya said, though she was not sure she really wanted to hear it. "I think you are trying to prove yourself in a game you cannot win," Blackwood said bluntly. "You are letting yourself be evaluated by a standard that is designed for a different type of operator. And, in doing so, you are missing your own potential." Maya blinked, not understanding. "Sir, the standards are the standards. If I cannot meet them, the standards measure capability," Blackwood interrupted. "But capability comes in many forms. Tell me, what happened during the boat evolution in Hell Week?" "We capsized," Maya said. "Candidate Mills became tangled underwater. I freed him." "You saved his life," Blackwood corrected. "While exhausted, in rough seas, with limited visibility, and your own air running out. You assessed the situation, made a decision, and executed under pressure. That is a warrior quality. But, you know what else I noticed in your file?" Maya shook her head, still trying to process where this conversation was going. During that urban warfare drill 3 weeks ago, you made a tactical decision that was risky but correct. You saw an angle others missed and executed on it. During the navigation exercise, you improvised a solution that saved your team time and demonstrated problem-solving under stress. These are not footnotes, Rodriguez. These are the qualities that separate good soldiers from great operators. But, sir, Maya said carefully, in hand-to-hand combat, those qualities do not matter much when I am pinned in under a minute. You are right, Blackwood said. In a pure wrestling match, you will lose to a 200-pound man more often than not. So the question is, why are you fighting wrestling matches? Maya frowned, not following his logic. Blackwood leaned forward, his eyes intense. Modern warfare is not about two people grappling on a mat. It is about small unit tactics, precision strikes, intelligence gathering, and adaptability. The days of armies clashing in fields are long gone. Now we fight in shadows, in urban environments, in situations where the ability to think and adapt is more valuable than the ability to bench press 300 pounds. I understand that, sir, Maya said. But there are still situations where physical confrontation is unavoidable. Absolutely, Blackwood agreed. And, in those situations, you will not be alone. You will have teammates, people who bring different strengths to the table. A team of identical operators, no matter how physically impressive, is less effective than a diverse team where each member brings unique capabilities. You have strengths that many of the men in your class lack. But you have been so focused on matching their strengths that you have not fully developed your own. Chief Holloway, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Commander Blackwood is taking over as lead instructor for the tactical operations phase of your training, starting next week. He has some ideas about how to better evaluate and develop the unique skill sets of all candidates. Blackwood nodded. I am not lowering SDC that you do not, Blackwood replied. Dismissed. Maya left the office in a daze, her mind spinning. She had expected to be told she was not good enough. Instead, she had been told she was measuring herself by the wrong standards. It was disorienting and hopeful and terrifying all at once. That night, lying in her bunk, Maya thought about what Blackwood had said. Was she trying to be something she was not? Had she been so focused on proving she could compete with men on their terms that she had neglected to develop her own unique approach? The idea was both liberating and challenging. It meant accepting that she would never be the strongest person in the room, but it also meant she could stop trying to be. The next morning, word had spread through the candidate barracks that Blackwood was taking over tactical operations training. Reactions were mixed. Some candidates were excited, seeing it as an opportunity to learn from a legend. Others were wary, uncertain what changes he would bring. And a few, Maya noticed, were openly resentful. During breakfast, she overheard a conversation between two candidates, both of whom had been vocal skeptics about women in combat roles. This is political, one was saying. They bring in Blackwood to make sure Rodriguez and Chin Pass change the standards so physical capability does not matter as much. You do not know that, his companion said, though he sounded uncertain. Why else would they shake up training right now? Think about the optics. If the women wash out, it becomes a PR problem. But if they change what it means to be a SEAL, make it more about tactics and less about physicality, suddenly, anyone can qualify. Maya felt her jaw clench. Part of her wanted to confront them, to argue that Blackwood's changes had nothing to do with her specifically. But she knew that would accomplish nothing. The only way to silence those doubts was through performance. On Monday morning, Commander Blackwood assembled the remaining 19 candidates in a classroom instead of the usual training field. It was an unusual start, and Maya could sense the confusion among her fellow candidates. Blackwood stood at the front of the room, arms crossed, surveying the group with those penetrating blue eyes. For the next 4 weeks, your training is going to change, he began without preamble. You have all proven you have the physical capability and mental toughness to be SEALs. Hell Week separated those with warrior spirit from those without. But being a SEAL is more than surviving suffering. It is about being an effective operator in the most complex, dangerous environments imaginable. He clicked a remote, and a projection appeared on the wall behind him. It showed an overhead view of a complex urban environment, buildings of various heights clustered together with narrow streets between them. This is a compound in a city I cannot name, where I led a mission to extract a high-value target. We had intelligence about the target's location, but the situation on the ground was fluid. Hostile forces in the area, civilians present, multiple exit routes, and a narrow window of opportunity. The team I led had 8 operators. We completed the mission with 0 casualties on our side and successfully extracted the target. Want to know why we succeeded? The candidates remained silent, waiting. Because every person on that team brought different strengths, Blackwood continued. I had a sniper who could make shots others could not. I had a communications specialist who could coordinate with air support in 3 languages. I had a medic who could treat combat injuries and also served as our cultural advisor because he had grown up in the region. I had a breacher who could get us through any door or wall. And yes, I had operators who were excellent in close-quarters combat. But the mission would have failed if everyone had the exact same skill set. He paused, letting that sink in. Modern special operations is about putting together teams where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That means identifying what each operator does best and maximizing those strengths while covering their weaknesses through teamwork. Starting today, your training will reflect that reality. Blackwood outlined his new approach. Instead of generic combat drills where everyone did the same evolutions, the training would become role-specific. Candidates would be evaluated on their overall tactical effectiveness, not just on their ability to win individual physical confrontations. There would still be physical standards. Everyone would still need to meet baseline requirements for strength, endurance, and combat readiness. But the emphasis would shift to how well they could function as part of a team in complex scenarios. Some of you are thinking this is lowering standards, Blackwood said, his voice hardening. Let me be clear, it is not. What I am about to put you through will be harder than anything you have done so far. Because now you do not just have to be physically tough. You have to be smart, adaptable, and tactically sound. You have to think under pressure, make decisions with incomplete information, and execute perfectly while exhausted. That is much more demanding than running until your legs give out. Over the next few days, Blackwood restructured the training. Candidates were given baseline physical training every morning, running, swimming, calisthenics, weights, to maintain fitness levels. But the afternoon sessions became scenario-based evolutions that tested tactical decision-making, teamwork, and adaptability. The first major evolution was a hostage rescue scenario. The candidates were divided into 3 teams and given a basic briefing. For hostages in a building, unknown number of hostiles, civilians potentially present, mission success defined as extracting hostages with minimal casualties. Each team had to plan and execute their approach. Maya found herself as part of a team with James, Connor, Lisa Chun, and 2 other candidates named Rodriguez and Kim. As they huddled to plan their approach, Blackwood watched from a distance, taking notes. We need to breach fast and hard, Connor said immediately. Overwhelming force before they can hurt the hostages. But we do not know the building layout, Lisa pointed out. We could be walking into an ambush. Then, we need reconnaissance first, Maya said. Let me scout the perimeter, look for entry points, and sight lines. James nodded. Good call. Connor, you and Rodriguez plan the breach. Kim, you are on Overwatch. Lisa and I will handle hostage extraction once we are inside. They spent 10 minutes planning before executing. Maya moved carefully around the building, a plywood structure filled with instructors playing the roles of hostages and hostiles. She identified 3 potential entry points and noted the positions where hostiles were likely to be stationed based on fields of fire. Returning to her team, she sketched a quick diagram. Main entrance is a kill box. Anyone coming through there is dead. But there is a side door with limited coverage and a window on the 2nd floor that is unguarded. If Kim can get to that office building with a vantage point, he can provide overwatch. We breach through the side door, clear the 1st floor, then extract hostages through the back. Connor studied her sketch. That works. Let's do it. The execution was not perfect. They took 1 casualty during the breach, and the extraction was messy. But they got all 4 hostages out safely and neutralized the hostile forces. When Blackwood debriefed them afterward, he focused not on the individual mistakes, but on the team's decision-making process. Rodriguez, your reconnaissance was good. You identified the weaknesses in the hostiles' defensive position. Connor, your breach was aggressive but controlled. Kim, your overwatch allowed the team to move with confidence. However, he paused, his eyes sweeping the group. Your communication during the extraction was sloppy. James and Lisa, you both tried to give orders at the same time, creating confusion. In combat, that confusion kills people. Clear command structure is not optional. Over the next 2 weeks, the scenarios grew more complex. Building clearances under time pressure. Ambush responses on moving vehicles. Reconnaissance missions where success was measured by intelligence gathered without being detected. Each evolution tested different skills, and each candidate found their strengths and weaknesses exposed in new ways. Maya excelled at planning and reconnaissance. Her attention to detail and ability to visualize tactical situations made her valuable in the preparation phase of operations. She was also surprisingly good at interrogation scenarios, where her ability to read people and adapt her approach proved effective. But she struggled in scenarios that required raw physical intimidation or in close-quarters confrontations where technique could not overcome size and strength disparities. Blackwood noted these struggles, but always in the context of team performance rather than individual failure. Rodriguez, you are not going to win a fist fight against someone twice your size, he told her bluntly after one evolution. But you know what? Neither will James against Connor. Neither will Kim against Rodriguez. Every operator has physical matchups they will lose. The key is not putting yourself in those situations. Use your brain to avoid fights you cannot win. That is not cowardice. That is tactics. The other candidates were beginning to understand this approach as well. Connor, who had been one of Maya's harshest critics, started actively seeking her input during planning sessions. James and Lisa formed an effective partnership, their complementary skills making them a formidable team. The entire class was learning to think of themselves not as individual warriors, but as components of a larger fighting force. But not everyone was happy with the changes. About 2 weeks into Blackwood's tenure, 3 candidates requested a meeting with him. Maya heard about it through the barracks rumor mill. The candidates were concerned that the new approach was diminishing the importance of physical capability and combat readiness. They felt that standards were being lowered to accommodate candidates who could not meet traditional warrior metrics. Blackwood called an all-hands meeting that evening. The 19 remaining candidates assembled in the classroom, tension thick in the air. Blackwood stood at the front, his expression stony. I understand some of you have he clicked to another image, this time showing a massive operator, easily 6'5" and built like a tank. This man was on a different team I worked with. Strongest person I have ever met. Could carry 2 wounded teammates at once. In hand-to-hand combat, he was unstoppable. But, on a mission in Iraq, his team walked into an ambush because they missed intelligence indicators that should have been obvious. 3 operators died. This man survived, carried a wounded teammate 6 miles to an extraction point, showed incredible physical courage. But the mission failed because the team did not have the tactical intelligence to avoid the ambush in the first place. Blackwood let the silence hang for a moment. Strength matters. Combat capability matters. But they are tools, not the whole toolbox. I am not lowering standards. I am expanding them. Because the enemies we face are not going to line up and fight us hand-to-hand. They are going to use improvised explosives, ambushes, asymmetric tactics, and guerrilla warfare. We need operators who can think, who can adapt, who can see 3 moves ahead. That requires a broader definition of warrior capability. One of the concerned candidates, a former Marine named Peterson, raised his hand. Sir, with respect, what happens when the planning falls apart, and we are in a close-quarters fight? What happens when there is no time for tactics, and it comes down to who is stronger and tougher? Then, you rely on your teammates who excel in that area, Blackwood said simply. Just like they rely on you when the situation calls for whatever your strengths are. No operator is perfect at everything. Not me, not you, not anyone in this room. But a team of specialists who trust each other and know how to leverage each member's strengths? That team is nearly unstoppable. He looked directly at Peterson. You are worried that Rodriguez cannot drag your body out of a firefight if you go down. Valid concern. So let me ask you, Can you speak Arabic? Can you read satellite imagery and identify enemy positions? Can you hack into an encrypted communications network? Because Rodriguez is learning all of those skills. And if you go down because you missed intelligence that could have prevented the firefight, her ability to carry you does not matter because you are already dead. The bluntness of the statement shocked the room into silence. Blackwood's point was clear. Everyone had limitations, and everyone brought different strengths. The goal was to build teams where those strengths complemented each other. We have 2 more weeks of training before final evaluations, Blackwood continued. I am going to push every one of you harder than you have been pushed. Not just physically, but mentally and tactically. Some of you will not make it, and that is fine. Not everyone is cut out for this work. But those who do make it will be better operators than they would have been under the old system. I guarantee it. Over the final 2 weeks, Blackwood made good on his promise. The training evolutions became increasingly complex and demanding. Multi-phase missions that required planning, execution, adaptation when things went wrong, and after-action analysis. Sleep deprivation was reintroduced, simulating the mental strain of sustained operations. The physical standards were maintained and even increased in some areas. But the difference was that candidates were now being evaluated holistically. Maya continued to struggle in pure grappling scenarios, but she excelled in mission planning, intelligence analysis, and tactical decision-making under pressure. Connor was a powerhouse in direct confrontation, but needed Maya's input to avoid tactical mistakes. James was a balanced operator, good at everything but exceptional at nothing, making him a valuable team glue. Lisa Chun had discovered a talent for demolitions and breaching, her steady hands and careful precision making her the go-to person for delicate explosive work. The final evaluation was a 48-hour field exercise. The candidates were divided into 3 teams and given a complex mission: locate a high-value target in a simulated hostile territory, gather intelligence on their operations, and, if possible, conduct a capture or elimination. The area covered 50 square miles of rough terrain, with instructors playing the roles of hostile forces, civilians, and informants. Maya's team consisted of 6 operators: herself, Connor, James, Lisa, and 2 others named Martinez and Sullivan. They were given basic intelligence and a satellite map, but otherwise left to their own devices. The team would be evaluated not just on mission success, but on how they worked together, how they adapted to unexpected challenges, and how they demonstrated the principles Blackwood had been teaching. The first day was spent on reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Maya took point on this phase, carefully observing enemy patrol patterns, identifying weak points in their security, and gathering information from simulated civilian contacts. The team moved carefully, avoiding detection while collecting data. By nightfall, Maya had assembled a detailed picture of the target's operation. The high-value target was in a central compound, protected by multiple layers of security. Direct assault would be suicide. But Maya had identified a pattern in the patrol rotations that created a 15-minute window every night around 0200 hours. The team huddled in a concealed position to plan their assault. Connor wanted to go in hard and fast during the window. Lisa suggested using explosives to create a diversion. James proposed a more subtle approach, infiltrating during the window and conducting a quiet extraction. Maya listened to all the proposals and then offered her own analysis. The target knows we are looking for him. That patrol pattern is too perfect, too predictable. I think it is a trap. They want us to hit during that window so they can ambush us. So what do you suggest? Connor asked, his tone respectful now, genuinely interested in her tactical assessment. We do not hit the compound at all, Maya said. According to the intelligence I gathered, the target leaves the compound every morning at 0600 to meet with subordinates at a secondary location. The security there is lighter. If we position ourselves along his route, we can intercept him in transit. Sullivan frowned. That is a deviation from the mission parameters. We were told to find him at his compound. Mission parameters said locate and capture or eliminate, Maya countered. It did not specify where. We complete the objective with fewer casualties and higher probability of success by changing the battlefield to our advantage. The team debated for another 10 minutes before reaching consensus. They would set up an ambush along the target's route. The plan required precise timing and coordination. Connor and Sullivan would be the assault element. James and Martinez would provide overwatch and cut off escape routes. Lisa would handle any vehicles that might interfere. Maya would serve as team leader, coordinating the moving pieces. They moved into position before dawn, concealing themselves along the narrow road where intelligence suggested the target would pass. The wait was tense. Each operator focused on their role, trusting their teammates to handle theirs. At 06:15, the target's vehicle appeared right on schedule. Maya gave the signal, and the team executed flawlessly. Connor and Sullivan disabled the vehicle and secured the target within 30 seconds. James and Martinez kept their overwatch positions secure. Lisa was ready with contingencies that were not needed. The entire operation was over in under 2 minutes, with 0 casualties. As they extracted with their prisoner, Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Not because she had proven herself individually, but because her team had trusted her assessment and executed a plan that played to all their strengths. The debrief back at base was conducted by Commander Blackwood himself. He reviewed the mission in detail, noting both successes and areas for improvement. When he got to Maya's decision to change the operational approach, he paused. "Rodriguez, you deviated from the expected approach based on tactical assessment. Walk me through your reasoning." Maya explained her logic. The suspicious patrol pattern, the intelligence about the secondary meeting location, the risk-benefit analysis of the ambush versus a compound assault. Blackwood listened without interrupting, his expression neutral. When she finished, he nodded slowly. That was the correct call. The compound was indeed set up as a trap. If you had hit it during that window, your team would have walked into a prepared kill zone. 2 other teams tried exactly that approach. Both failed the exercise. Your team succeeded because you trusted your intelligence assessment over the obvious tactical choice. He looked at the rest of Maya's team. And your team succeeded because everyone trusted Rodriguez's judgment and executed their roles perfectly. Connor, you could have argued for the more aggressive approach, but you listened to the tactical analysis and adapted. That is what good operators do. The final evaluations were held the following week. Of the 19 candidates who had made it to this point, 17 successfully completed the program. Maya was one of them, as was Connor, James, and Lisa. 2 candidates washed out in the final evaluation, not because they lacked physical capability, but because they failed to demonstrate the tactical judgment and teamwork that Blackwood's approach demanded. At the graduation ceremony, attended by senior officers and SEAL community leaders, Commander Blackwood gave a speech that Maya knew she would remember forever. "The operators standing before you today are not just physically capable," he said. "They are tactically sound, mentally resilient, and trained to function as part of an integrated team. They represent the future of special operations. A future where we leverage diverse skill sets, where we value intelligence as much as strength, where we understand that the most dangerous weapon in warfare is not a rifle or a bomb, but a well-trained mind working in concert with other well-trained minds." He looked directly at Maya when he said the next part. Some people questioned whether certain candidates belonged in this program. They looked at physical attributes and made assumptions about combat capability. Those people were wrong. Every operator here has earned their place through performance, through courage, through the demonstrated ability to function under pressure and complete the mission. I would trust any of them with my life. After the ceremony, Connor approached Maya. The 2 of them had come a long way from that first grappling match, from his skeptical comments in the barracks. He extended his hand, and when she shook it, his grip was firm and respectful. "I owe you more than an apology," Connor said. "I owe you thanks. You made me a better operator. You taught me to think beyond just physical solutions. In that final exercise, if we had done things my way, we would have failed. Your approach saved the mission." "We saved the mission," Maya corrected. "As a team. That is what Blackwood has been trying to teach us all along." Connor nodded. "I get it now. I just wish I had gotten it sooner. Would have saved us both a lot of headache." Maya smiled. Better late than never. As the graduates dispersed, beginning the next phase of their SEAL training, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The struggle, the doubt, the moments when she had questioned whether she belonged. But she had persevered, and more importantly, she had found her own path to success rather than trying to imitate someone else's. Commander Blackwood found her as she was packing up her gear. Rodriguez, a word. She turned, standing at attention. Blackwood waved off the formality. At ease. I wanted to tell you something before you ship out for your next training phase. Sir, you are going to face more challenges, he said bluntly. Not everyone in the SEAL community agrees with my approach. Some will see you as a symbol of lowered standards, no matter how well you perform. Some will look for any excuse to claim you do not belong. Maya nodded. She had expected this. I understand, sir. But here is what I want you to remember, Blackwood continued. You did not make it through this program because anyone gave you special treatment or lowered standards. You made it because you are a capable operator who brings valuable skills to the teams. You earned your trident the same way every SEAL earns it, through sweat, blood, and determination. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. I won not, sir. Good. Blackwood extended his hand, and Maya shook it. I will be watching your career with interest, Rodriguez. I think you are going to do great things. Just remember, warfare is evolving, tactics are changing, and the military needs operators who can think as well as they can fight. You represent that future. Several months later, Maya found herself deployed to an undisclosed location in the Middle East as part of a SEAL team conducting counter-terrorism operations. The work was dangerous and demanding, exactly what she had trained for. Her team leader was a veteran operator named Lieutenant Harris, who had initially been skeptical about having a female SEAL on his team, but who had been won over by Maya's performance during pre-deployment training. On a mission to locate a weapons cache in a complex urban environment, Maya's intelligence analysis identified a pattern in enemy communications that suggested a trap at the suspected location. She proposed an alternative approach that involved more extensive surveillance and a delayed operation. Harris listened to her assessment and agreed, postponing the operation by 24 hours to gather more intelligence. The additional surveillance revealed that the original location was indeed an ambush site, and the real weapons cache was at a different location. The team adjusted their plan, hit the actual target, and secured the weapons without casualties. During the debrief, Harris made a point of crediting Maya's analysis with saving lives. That was good work, Rodriguez, he said. Exactly the kind of tactical thinking we need. As Maya continued her deployment, she thought often about Commander Blackwood and the lessons he had taught. She still faced skepticism from some quarters, still heard whispers about whether women belonged in combat roles. But she no longer felt the need to prove herself through individual physical confrontations. She understood now that being a warrior was about more than strength or size. It was about courage, intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to put the mission and your teammates above yourself. It was about bringing your unique strengths to the team and trusting your teammates to bring theirs. It was about understanding that there were many ways to be dangerous, many ways to be effective, many ways to serve. One evening, during a rare moment of downtime, Maya received an email from Connor. He was deployed with a different team, but had heard about her successful mission. His message was brief, but meaningful. Heard about your outstanding work. Glad to have operators like you watching our backs. Stay safe out there. Maya smiled as she read the message. It represented how far they had both come, from that first day on the training ground when he had doubted her place to now, when he could acknowledge her as a peer and fellow warrior without reservation. She thought about all the young women who might come after her, who might look at her path and see possibility instead of impossibility. She hoped that Commander Blackwood's approach would become the standard, that future warriors would be evaluated on their full range of capabilities rather than just their ability to win a wrestling match. But even if the old attitudes persisted, even if she continued to face skepticism and doubt, Maya knew one thing with absolute certainty. She belonged here. She had earned her place. And she would continue to prove, mission after mission, that capability came in many forms, and that true warriors were defined not by their size or gender but by their courage, skill, and dedication to the mission. The sun was setting over the compound, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and red. Maya checked her gear one more time, preparing for the night's operation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself, new chances to demonstrate that Commander Blackwood had been right about the future of warfare. She was ready. Concerns about the direction of training, he said without preamble. You think I am making this softer, lowering standards to accommodate those who cannot hack traditional combat training. So let me address that directly. He clicked his remote, and images appeared on the screen behind him. Combat footage, grainy and violent, showing operators moving through a hostile environment. This is footage from a mission in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Six-man team, tasked with locating and neutralizing a bomb-making facility. The team was compromised 2 clicks from the target, outnumbered 3-1, taking fire from multiple positions. The footage showed chaotic combat, muzzle flashes in the darkness, operators moving with practiced precision under fire. The team leader made a decision. Instead of trying to fight their way out directly, he called in air support and had his team mark targets with lasers while maintaining defensive positions. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they used superior tactics, technology, and coordination to turn the situation around. All 6 operators made it out. The bomb facility was destroyed. Mission success. Blackwood paused the footage and turned to face the candidates. Now, let me tell you about that team. The team leader was 5'9" and 160 pounds. He could not bench press what Connor can probably warm up with. One of his operators was a former college math professor who had joined the Navy at 30 years old. Another was a woman who had transferred from Army intelligence. These were not the biggest, strongest, most physically intimidating people you would ever meet. But they were the most effective operators I have ever seen because they understood that warfare is about intelligence, adaptability, and teamwork, standards. If anything, I am raising them. But I am changing how we measure success. Combat is too complex, too multifaceted to reduce to simple metrics like how fast you can run or how much you can lift. Those things matter, but they are not everything. Maya felt a stirring of hope, but also suspicion. Sir, with all due respect, this sounds like special accommodation. That is exactly what I do not want. It is not special accommodation, Blackwood said firmly. It is modern tactical doctrine. The military has been slow to adapt, clinging to outdated models of what makes an effective warrior. I have seen the future of warfare, Rodriguez. I have led missions where success depended on language skills, cultural awareness, technical proficiency, and tactical creativity. The strongest person in the room was not always the most valuable. He stood up, and Maya rose with him. Blackwood was tall, probably 6'3", and carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. I am not promising you that this will be easy, he said. In fact, I am about to make your training harder. But I am going to give you the opportunity to demonstrate your worth in ways that actually matter in combat. What you do with that opportunity is up to you. I will not let you down, sir, Maya said. Rodriguez, that was fast thinking under pressure, he said. Good work. It was the first unqualified praise Maya had received from him, and it meant more than any trophy or medal ever could. But she did not have time to savor it. The next evolution was already beginning, and Hell Week was far from over. That night, during one of the few brief rest periods, Connor approached Maya where she sat against a concrete wall, her body shaking with exhaustion and cold. James, Connor, and a quiet candidate named Lisa Chun, one of the other 2 women in the program. The matchup felt deliberate, an opportunity for the instructors to see how the female candidates performed in a direct combat simulation. Maya pushed the thought aside and focused on the mission brief. Their team drew the attacking role first. As they stacked up outside the first structure, Maya felt her heart pounding, adrenaline sharpening her senses. James took point, with Connor behind him, then Maya, then Lisa. The door burst open, and they flowed inside, weapons up, scanning for threats. The defending team was waiting. Paintballs erupted from concealed positions, and the room exploded into chaos. James took a hit immediately, a bright orange splatter across his chest marking him as a casualty. Connor returned fire, his larger frame making him a target. He eliminated one defender, but caught 2 rounds in the process. He was out.